Today's daf is Daf Yud Zayin. Today is a fascinating daf, and we're going to begin from Daf Tez Zayin Omid Beis. I'm going to make it bigger, about 3 lines from the bottom. Now, it's probably the most fascinating Gemaras that we ever learned. I mean, I've said that before, but I keep coming across all these Gemaras that are so fascinating in its theme. So basically, we know, okay, there was something called Aseres HaShvatim, the 10 Shvatim. They lived in the north of Israel, and they were thrown into Galus by Sancheriv, okay? And they were spread out, let's say, to Lebanon, Iran, Iraq. We don't know exactly precisely where, but this is 700 BCE, right? 700 before the Common Era. They had a good portion of Klal Yisrael, 10 out of 12 Shvatim were thrown out of Israel and spread out all over the world. And it's so interesting because you can see that in Ukraine, where millions of people are displaced. Well, the way Sancheriv conquered his Assyria, the king of Assyria conquered his countries, was he displaced the people there. So the 10 Shvatim were sent all over into certain places in the world. And like it happens, they assimilated, right? And that's not a foreign idea. We find that Jews assimilated wherever they went. Even in Mitzrayim, they assimilated, right? Because only 20% of the Jews left Egypt. 80% didn't want to go with Moshe Rabbeinu. So now we're starting this Gemara, which says a fascinating thing. 3 lines from the bottom. Zod the Gemara, Omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Rav Asi. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav Asi, Goy shekidish bezman hazeh. A goy comes and goes over to a Bas Yisrael and makes kedushin, right? So let me just say, hi Sheldon, we just began. Tezayin Omid Beis, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi. We just began. Goy shekidish bezman hazeh. If a goy comes and makes kedushin for a Bas Yisrael, gives a girl, a Jewish girl, money and says, "You're my wife." So normally, if a goy marries a yid, kedushin doesn't take effect. But the Gemara says, "Choishishin li kedushin." You are concerned that the kedushin will take effect. Why? How could it be? Because Shema me'aseres hashvatim hu. Maybe this person was from the aseres hashvatim. What does that mean? It means that this goy came from the Yidden who were thrown out of their country of Israel and spread over to Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, wherever they went. And a Yid was intermarried with a goy. And this Rav Asi holds that if a Yid marries a Yid marries a goyish lady, the child is a Jewish mamzer. So we are concerned that really this goy was a Jewish mamzer. He's really a Jew. And if a Jew that's Mekadesh another Jew, the Kedushin should take effect. That's what he said. So the Gemara asks, so that's, first of all, we're always under the impression that everybody holds that if a Yid, a male Jew, marries, has relationships with a female goy, the child is a goy. But no, Rav Asi holds the child is Jewish and is considered a mamzer. So the Gemara, so any goy that comes, we always consider... any guy that comes, maybe he's from the Aseres HaShvatim. So the Gemara says, was?
How many Shvatim is here, Mamze?
Nein. There's gewähnt 10 Shvatim, wo es ist übergespreit auf der ganzen Welt. Nicht auf der ganzen Welt, Sancheriv ist gemacht, hat der 10 Shvatim übergehen auf der ganzen Welt. So after den Goy, was kommt daheim, after is a Yid, and is Mekadesh and Isha, Zogt as medaf choishizan van zan kedushin. Efter is der goy ayid and nor as gebein of ayid from the aseres hashvatim. So the Gemara asks the question: how could it be the whole the parish meruba parish? Every goy that comes to you, mistuma, he's not a goy. Mistuma, he's a goy from the roiv of the world. Most of the majority of the world are goyim, not from the aseres hashvatim. So how could you say that this goy was concerned that maybe he's a Jew? Answers the Gemara, we're only talking about if you go to that place where we know that the Aseres Hashvatim were sent there, if we know that place, then if you go there, you're very concerned that it's from the Aseres Hashvatim. Because even if it's a goy, but like I said before, even if the Aseres Hashvatim at that time assimilated with goyish ladies, the child will be considered a yid, the shemamzer. Now, where did they go? Where did the Aseres Hashvatim go? The Amar Rabba Abba Bar Kahana. Rabba Abba Bar Kahana said, "Vayanchem bachlach Sancherev, the king of Assyria, led all the 10 shvatim bachlach uvechovar nahar goyzim v'orimode. He threw them out of Eretz Yisrael, the north of Israel, and sent all the Yidden to live. He relocated them to live in Chalach, Chovar, Nahar Goyzim v'orimode. Chalach, the Gemara says, these places are known places in the time of the Gemara. Chalach ze Chalzain. The Chovar ze, it's a place called, we go to Yud Zayin Amal Zichadayav. Nahar Goyzim zen Ginzak v'orimode ze Chamadim v'chavreseh. Orimodin is a place called Chamadim and the surrounding areas. But Amri Lo, and others say Zu Nihar v'chavreseh. It's a place called Nihar and its surrounding areas. And Chavreseh man, what are the surrounding areas called? Mashmul Krach Mushli Chivke v'Demakia. What the Gemara just listed off are places where, known in the Gemara, that's where the 10 Shvatim ended up. Now, we're on the, I think you're all familiar with the famous statement that the 10 Shvatim are someplace where they're behind this place, the river Nahar Sambatyon. And they're all together waiting for the Mashiach to come, and then they're going to come back, right? But that's the opinion of the Yerushalmi. But the opinion of the Bavli Gemara is that the Aseres Shvatim are in a certain place. We'll assume Iraq, Iran, and Lebanon, although there is rumors that they were in Ecuador, and maybe the Native Americans could have been from the Aseres Shvatim. Who knows? So, but the Gemara lists off known places where the Aseres Shvatim ended up, and therefore, if a guy would be Mekadesh Nisha, if you know he's a guy, you're always chosheshin that maybe he was from from the generations of Aseres Shvatim, and this guy might be a Yid. Omar Rabbi Yochanan said, "V'kula lifso." Rabbi Yochanan said that I'm not concerned. Really, the Aseres Shvatim did not intermarry with Goyim. They really did not intermarry with Goyim. They married amongst themselves, but they assimilated enough into that society that the reason why we consider them mamzerim is because they ended up marrying their sisters and daughters. They had these tribal cultures there that they didn't intermarry with Goyim, but they married amongst themselves, and therefore they're mamzerim. Anyhow, that's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. So if you go to these places, you may assume that you're dealing with a Jew there, and therefore you have to be concerned that they're from the Aseres Shvatim. That's what we just learned. So basically, the original opinion was that a goy, a yid, a Jew from the Aseres Shvatim, intermarries with a goyish lady, the child is a yid, the shemamzer. That's what he said. That's what Rabasi said. When Rabasi died, Rabbi Yehuda came and visited Shmuel, his new Rebbe. Kamrisa kamei de Shmuel. When I came to Shmuel, he disagreed with Rabasi. He said that even if the male yid, male Aseres Shvatim, married the female goy, it can't be a Jew. Because Amalei bincha bo min Israel kare bincha, ve'ein bincha bo min agoya kare bincha ela bana. Because he's basing it on this pasuk. The pasuk here, right up in this page, is in Devarim, early part of Devarim, where the Torah says, "Don't intermarry with goyim." And the Torah tells you two examples. One example is your daughter, bitcha loisitin libnoi. Your daughter, you're not supposed to give to a goyish man. Ubitoi, his daughter, loisikach levenecha, don't take it for your son. So your son should not marry his daughter. And then the Torah gives you the reason, because ki yoser es bincha macharai. This bincha means he will make your son turn into your grandson, basically, into away from us, from me, and make him serve idols. So this pasuk says right over here that we are concerned that he will return your son away from me. What does that mean? The Torah refers back to this case where it refers to your daughter marrying a Goyish man. And the Torah is saying that child is really a Jew, and that child can be brought up like a goy because the father is going to make him go serve Avodah Zarah. Now, why is the Torah only concerned in that case where your daughter is taking his son? Why doesn't the Torah concern where his daughter, your son, is marrying his daughter, and say that his daughter is going to, take the anicle and make him work Avodah Zarah? Because the pasuk implies that when your son marries his daughter, the child is a goy anyway. So here you see clearly in the Torah, according to Shmuel, when a Jewish man marries a goyish lady, the child is a goy. It's only when your daughter marries his son, when your daughter marries a goy, then the child is a yid. And the Torah is concerned that even if the child is a yid, having a goyish father, the goyish father is going to make him serve Avodah Zarah. So that's what Rabbi Shmuel said. I'm not concerned that the Aseres Shvatim married goyish ladies, because no matter what, the child will be would not be called your son. El Benoetz goes after the goyish lady. So the Gemara asks the question: okay, but when they went into exile, it could be that the Jewish women from the Aseres Shvatim, from the 10 lost tribes, married goyish men. But you agree that there's daughters of the 10 tribes that may have intermarried with the goyim, and there you agree. Ravina, and Ravina said the same thing what Shmuel said. Shmamina ben bitcha, the son of your daughter, haba min agoy, that comes from a goy. That means the goy is the father, and the mother is Jewish. Kari bincha, that's called a Jewish kid. So why don't you concern that maybe that happened over there, where the Aseres Shvatim ladies intermarried with the male goyim? So the Gemara says, Gemiri, we have a tradition that when the 10 tribes went into exile, the Benosa Dehudara Itzdarui Itzdaru, because they caused themselves not to be able, they sterilized themselves basically, so they will not have children. So those ladies, either they did it on purpose, or because of the hardships of being exiled from Israel and being displaced, caused them not to have any children. So I'm not concerned that the ladies gave birth to children. I'm only concerned about the male men intermarrying with the goyish ladies, and then we just said that they are goyim anyway. Ika de Amri, another version said, even if you want to say that there were Jewish, look what this says, a fascinating Gemara. We're always convinced that a yid that turns into a goy always remains a yid. A yid is a yid. But the Gemara says over here that the 10 lost tribes, that all the Chachamim got together and said all the 10 tribes are now goyim. They removed their Jewishness. Ika de Amri kamisa kamei de Shmuel amalei. Shmuel said, the rabbis didn't move from there. They made them like goyim. Shnema b'Hashem bagadu. The 10 tribes betrayed God. Kivarim zaram yaladu. They gave birth to strange children. They intermarried. So at a specific moment in time, all the great rabbis got together and undid their Jewishness. So there's no Jewish 10 tribes. So that's the Gemara says. Now the Gemara continues. It's interesting that that part of the Lubavitch outreach into teaching people the 10 mitzvahs b'nei Noach is the concern that they might be Jewish from the 10 tribes. So there is opinions that is the 10 tribes going to come back when Mashiach is coming. But from our Gemara, we just learned that, so to speak, Shmuel said that they made them un-Jewish anymore. New Gemara. Yosef Rav Yosef Charid Rav Kana. Rav Yosef was sitting in the back of Rav Kana. Yosef Rav Kana kamed Rav Yehuda. Yosef Kama. Rav Kana was sitting in front of Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda was giving a shir. He said, "Asidin Yisrael the Avda Yamotova Kichar v'Tarmoid." The Jewish people are going to make a great holiday when this place Tarmoid will be destroyed, like some parts of Ukraine. Why should it be such a Yom Tif? Because over there, this place of Tarmoid had a lot of mamzerim there. Jewish mamzerim lived there. Whatever reason, they lived in Tarmoid. And therefore, somehow, Jewish people went there for shidduch or whatever, or they came to where regular Jews lived, and they intermarried with us, and they bring mamzerim into the Jewish people. So the Gemara says, but in the history books, it says Tarmoid was destroyed. And says the Gemara, Talmud Havai. You're misreading it. Talmud was destroyed, but Tarmoid still exists. Ravashi says, Hani Talmud, Hani Talmud. Talmud and Talmud are the same thing, but Ichpuli hu de Ichpal. They only destroyed part of Tarmoid, but then they rebuilt the other part of the city. So it wasn't totally destroyed. Charuv Mahai Gisa, they destroyed from one part, Oisim Mahai Gisa, and they rebuilt it on the other part. Vichar Mahai Gisa, Oisim Mahai Gisa. You destroy the other part, the one that remaining part, they build another part. So they keep rebuilding themselves. The total place where all these Jewish mamzerim live is part of Tarmoid, and it wasn't fully destroyed. But when it will be destroyed, the Jewish people will make a big yontif for it. Yosef, now the Gemara tells a story. Yosef Rav Hamnuna, the great Rav Hamnuna, was a sharp person, and he was Kamei de Ula. He was in a shir in front of Ula, and he was asking difficult questions, and Ula was proud of him. The Kahavi B'Shmaitza, they were learning. Amar, so Ula wanted to compliment Rav Hamnuna, and in the same way, he gave him a back-ended insult. Amar, he said, my Gavra, what a great person, what a learned person is this Rav Hamnuna. But he loved the Harpanya Ma'ase. But the problem is he comes from Harpanya. And Harpanya had a lot of mamzerim there. So he doesn't come from a very miyuchas diga place. It could be this Rav Hamnuna doesn't have such a great yichas to him. So Ichsef, Rav Hamnuna was insultive. And then Ula realized that he said something insulting to Rav Hamnuna. Amalei, so he asked him, Kesef Gugolta Lahechi Yahavis, where do you pay your taxes? In other words, I know you come from Harpanya, but do you actually come from the main city of Harpanya or an outskirts? Amalei Lefum Nahara. So I pay my taxes to Lefum Nahara. So it's like, you're saying you come from, you live in the five towns. But if someone calls you a New York City rat, you say, no, I pay my taxes to the village of the five towns. So therefore, I'm more of a five towns person than a city person. Now, that's basically what he's saying. I pay my taxes from Nahara. Amalei. So Ula said, oh, you're not from Hapanya, you're from Inkemupum Naharaat, and therefore you're not, you have yichas there. You're not from the main Harpanya, and therefore Harpanya was a bad place to come from, but you're a Lefum Nahara person. So the Gemara says, my Harpanya. Why is it called Harpanya? Rab Zera Har Shakoil Poinim Boy. It's a mountain place that everybody comes there. So what does that mean? So look at Rashi says, Kol Psulim She'ein Moitziin Isha Poinim V'Holchim Sham. Any possible person that had couldn't find a wife because something went wrong in his lineage, he would go there to find a wife because they didn't care who they married. So you say your mamzer, you'll find the shidduch over there. So that's what the place was. But Masnita Tana, in the Brisa we learned Kol she'ein maker mishpachte v'shiftei niftesh l'sham, that if you don't know which mishpacha or shevet you end up there. If you want to find somebody, you can end up there. Somebody will marry you there. Amar Rava said, "V'hi amuka mishal." It's worse than Gehenim. That's an expression. Why is the place worse than Gehenim? Because being a mamzer, you never get fixed with that. But if you go into Gehenim, after 12 months, you're out. Shenema miyachel efte mimovas egolem. From hell, the netherworld, you get redeemed, and from death, you will be also redeemed. So v'ilu psul ditu, these psulim leslu takanta, they never have a fix. So it's a worse place than Gehenim to be in that area and be a psul. And then the Gemara ends off the psuli daharpanya, the psulim, the problem people of Harpanya really Mishum de Psuli Meshan. It was because there was an overflow of Psulim people in Meshan, ended up in Harpanya. Psuli de Peshan ended up Mishum Psuli de Tarmaid, because Tarmaid. So Tarmaid was a big source. When there was no room in Tarmaid, people moved to Meshan. When there was no room in Meshan, these Psulim ended up in Harpanya. That's how Harpanya ended up with a lot of Psulim there over there. A lot of Mamzerim, a lot of people who had trouble with their lineage. And where did Tarmaid get their Psulim from? Psuli de Tarmaid Mishum Avdei Shlomo. If we remember, the servants of Shlomo HaMelech were very, very rich, but they were Goyim. And they ended up going to Tarmaid and intermarried with Jewish women. And we hold that a goy marries a Jewish woman, the child is a mamzer. That's how this all comes. So these mamzerim of Tarmoid ended up in Meshan, and some of them from Meshan ended up in Harpanya. Over time, they just spread out. Behind the Amri Inche, people say this adage: Kama Rabba Kama Zuta. You have a bad weight or a big bad weight for your scale, or a small weight for your scale. Both things are bad. Mingad v'ozel l'shoil, all ended up l'shoil. Now we'll learn, like the Taisus over here, that this l'shoil means Bavel. A lot of psulim people, there were always psulim people of Jewish people who have lineage problems, and it's not just having lineage problems, because the Gemara says mamzerim generally are azponim, narcissistic people. And if you don't know if he's really a mamzer or not a mamzer, they end up giving the Jewish people a bad name. So it's not just that. So they first ended up in Bavel, umishal the Tarmaid, and from Bavel they ended up in Tarmaid, umitarmaid lameshim, meshim laharpanya. So anyway, it rolled from place to place. So it's these mamzerim always ended up somehow next to regular Jewish neighborhoods. Again, if you want to know, sometimes you have very bad Jews, people who call themselves Jews and end up doing terrible, terrible things. You have to check their yichus. That's like I would have checked Meirov's yichus, where he comes from, to do things like that. So that's what the Gemara is telling you, that these people have a certain chutzpah, and they always were part of Jewish people, but they always had a place to marry, because there was always women that intermarried with them. We finished the first parak. Next parak. Ketzad, this is easy. Ketzad Eishes Achav Shloya Beilamai. We had this case over here. Hold on. Yeah, we had this case over here. Very simple. You have how is it possible to have Eishes Achav Shloya Beilamai? What does that mean? That the brother was not around. For example, Reuven had a daughter, Esther, who married Shimon and Chana. Now, Shimon did Yibam on Esther. I mean, Reuven was married to Esther. I'm sorry. Reuven was married to Esther. When Reuven died, Levi was born. So Levi never met Reuven. Levi is the new brother that came into the world. He wasn't in the world when the original brother was around. Now Shimon does Yibam to Esther, and now Shimon dies. Levi, who always was usher on Esther, because that's Eishes Ach Shloi Hayele Beilamai, that always remains usher, and therefore Chana, the co-wife of Shimon, is now potter from Yibam and Chalitza. Okay, that's called Eishes Achiv, your brother's wife. You were not there at the same time. Ketzad, says the Mishnah, Eishes Achiv Shloi Hayele Beilamai. What's the case of your wife's brother that wasn't around in the same world when you were? You have Shnei Achim, you have two brothers, Umeis Echad Mehem, and one of the brothers died, right? And then before Yibam happened, V'noiled Lehem Ach, they have a new brother. So you have Reuven Shimon. Reuven died, left over a wife, and then Levi was born. V'achakach Yibam Hasheni is Eishes Achiv. Then the second brother, Shimon, was Miyabim, did Yibam to Reuven's brother, and then V'meis, Shimon died. So Harishayna, the original wife of Reuven, who is now Shimon's wife, Yaitze Mishum Eishes, she, now although she's falling to Yibam to Levi, but she can't fall to Yibam to Levi, because she always remains also to Levi, because this is Eishes Ach Shalai Hayalai Bailamai, because this was originally his brother's wife that he was not allowed to do Yibam since he didn't live at the same time that his brother lived. Since Levi didn't live at the same time that Reuven lived, so he's forever asa on Reuven's original wife. Therefore, although this original wife married Shimon, she goes free, and then there's no Yibam there. They weren't around at the same time. Bahashaniya, the co-wife of Shimon, Mishum Sarasa, this is the co-wife of an erva, and therefore she goes free. Now the Mishnah says, also Bamamar, let's say Shimon, right over here, Shimon, instead of marrying, did Yibam Bia. Yibam means you cohabitated with her. That's what the Torah says. But instead of doing Bia, he just did it like he gave her some money. So he did a Kedushin Midrabanan. So technically, Shimon is not married to this Esther. So really, Chana, when Shimon died without doing a complete Yibam, Chana Midairaisa falls to Levi as a Yibam. So also B'Maime Umeis, Shnia, the co-wife, she does, could do chalitza, but you don't do yibam, because at the end of the day, midoraisa, Levi's bonded is connected to Chana, because Shimon midoraisa is
memory full.
Shimon midoraisa is considered the Shimon midoraisa is considered married to Chana only, not midrabanan. Zog the Gemara. Rav Nachman said, when you call this original wife of Levi, of Reuven, the Mishnah says it's called Rishoina. And there was another gersa of the Mishnah that called her Shnia, the second wife. So if you have a gersa Rishoina, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. If you call it Rishoina, the reason why you call this wife, Esther, the original wife of Reuven, Rishoina, because the word Rishoina Lenafila, the original one that fell, that Rishoina doesn't mean number one, wife number one. It means the original wife. That's why it's called Rishoina. But if you call Esther number two wife, that she was married second. In other words, that Shimon was originally married to Chana, and then then he took Esther. So Esther is now the second wife of Shimon. So the Gemara asks, but that can work the other way too, because it could work that if Shimon marries Esther first and then takes Chana, it's still Chana. You can't do Yibam on Esther, and you won't be able to do Chana Yibam on Chana. So why do you call Esther Shnia? The Gemara says, "My Shnia Shnia." She's married for the second one she married. Mila Yaskinin, can't the Mishnah also be talking about the Yibam, that Shimon first made Yibam on Reuven's wife, and then he married somebody else? Why do you have to say that Shimon was first married and then did Yibam? So you can't definitely call her the wife of Reuven the second wife. Elamai Shnia. What does Shnia mean? Shnia bin Su'in, that it's the second marriage of her. She was married to Reuven, and now she's married to Shimon. Anyway, it's just semantics of what was written in the Mishnah, the word Rishayna or the word Shnia. Now the Gemara says a question, simple. The wife of your brother that you weren't in the world, where does it say in the Torah that there's no Yibam there? How do you know that Levi that's born right after Reuven dies cannot do Yibam with Reuven's wife? Where does it say that in the Torah? Amar Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav Amakra Kiyeshlu Yachim Yachtav, that two brothers have to be around at the same time. You see this word Yachtav. Shahisulem Yeshiva Achas B'Oilama. They will live around at the same time. Prat le'eshes Achav Shloyalama B'Oilama. That excludes a brother that was not around at the same time that the brother died. There's no mitzvah of Yibam there. And because there's no mitzvah of Yibam, she always remains the Issa Erva of your brother's wife. Yachtav. What does the word Yachtav teach you? That it's your brother's wife from your father. Miyuchadim benachla, that they both inherit the same father. Prat, it excludes la'achiv min ha'em. A brother from the mother does not do Yibam. If you just have a brother, if a person just has a brother from his mother's side, there's no Yibam there. The only ones that do Yibam, if they share a same father. That's what the Gemara says. Rabba Amar Achim min Av Yalef min Achva Achma b'bnei Yaakov. He learns that you can. How do you know that it's the brother of the father, not the brother of the mother, that determines who does Yibam? Because you learn a Gezeira Shava from the sons of Yaakov. What's that talking about? Right over here. It says Ki Yeshu Achim Yaakov. You see, I have it over here, the word Achim. And then there's another pasuk that says the word Achim by Yaakov's sons. They were saying Shneim Asa Nachnu, with 12 sons, brothers. Now it's Achim Achim, a Gezeira Shava, Achim Achim. So we see that brothers, when it says Achim by Yibam, it means Achim from the fathers, because all 12 sons came from different mothers by Yaakov. So that's what he says. Danim Achim Achim, Danim Achim Achim from Yaakov Avinu. Malahal min Av, just like over there, the sons of Yaakov were brothers from the father, V'loy min ha'em, not from the same mother. Avkam min Av, V'loy min ha'em. So also by Yibam, it's the determining factor is being a brother from the father, not from the mother. So the Gemara says, V'leilav achva achim min arayis. Let's learn the Gzeira Shava, like from here. Achim, it says Yeshua Achim Yachtav, and then it says Erves Esha Sachicha Loisagale. And here the word Achicha means your brother, even from your mother's side. You can't marry his wife. You can't marry your brother's wife if he has children, and not the mitzvah yibam. If your brother dies or divorces her, you can't marry her, even if it's your brother from your mother. So who says to learn Achim from the Yaakov Avinu? Learn it from Erves Esha Achicha Loisagali. So the Gemara is going to say, here the word is achicha. Here is the word achim. So I learn achim to achim rather than achim to achicha. Then the Gemara is going to say, okay, but I find that Lot called his uncle Avram achim. He said, Vayom Avram Lot, ki anoshim achim anachu. Even though they're not really brothers, they're nephew and uncle, but Lot called him Achim. So maybe I would think that there is a mitzvah, that's the Gemara's next question, there's a mitzvah for a nephew to marry his aunt. His aunt should fall to Yibim, to the nephew. That's the Gemara's next question. That's Gemara's next question later. So the Gemara says, V'leilav achva achim arayis. So the Gemara says, Don achim achim. Donim achim achicha. You'll rather learn achim from the word achim, not from the word achicha. So the Gemara says, who says it has to be precisely the exact same word? We find other places that you can learn a Gzeira Shava from two different words, shav and ba. One means return, one means come, but they're similar words. Who says they have to be exactly the same words? So the Gemara says, Hani Mili, when do you have to be the exact same words? If you have no other word like it, then you could learn, even if they're not similar words, you could learn a Gzeira Shava, like shav uba. If I have an exact same word, and I have one word that's not exactly, so then mididamile yalfinum. We try to make the Gzeira Shava to the exact same word, not to the similar word. And therefore, in this case, we would rather learn achim to achim than achim to achicha, since there's another word that's more similar. This is more closer source to learn a Gzeira Shava. Then the Gemara says, let's learn achva achva from light. Why? Let us say that you should do yibam to your aunt, because Lot called his uncle achim, brothers. So the Gemara says, then it's more logical to learn from Yaakov Avinu b'shum demufnei, because it's open, and you need a pasuk, an extra word. It could have written, we are 12 servants, sons of your father. The word achim is extra. Uksiv achim, and it says the word achim, shma mino lafnuye. So the Gemara says, I rather learn out from Bnei Yaakov than from Lot, because the word achim by Bnei Yaakov is extra. And when it's extra, it's coming to teach you something. So once it's extra, it's teaching you that by Yibam, it's a brother from the father. By Lot, the Gemara right now is saying it's not extra. The achim by Lot is not extra. Then the Gemara says, so we have two sources that it's brothers from the father's side. One is from Yachtov, and one is from Achim, the Gzeir Shava, Achim to the Bnei Yaakov. I need the both sources to teach you that Yibam is only from a brother from your father's side. If we just say the word Achim, I will learn a Gzeir Shava from Loit. And I will, if you're going to tell me that Loit is not empty to teach you an Gzeir Shava, I will say just the opposite. Even Loit, the word Achim is extra. It could have said Re'im. Since it could have said by Loit, it could have said Re'im. It could have said another word. We are friends. But the fact that it uses this word Achim, maybe that's teaching you that you should extend it to Yibam, from nephew to uncle, to aunt. So that's why I need the word Yachtov, another source that tells you it's your brother that you inherit together with, a brother from the father. We need brothers that you inherit together, not an uncle-nephew relationship. Because of Rahman, if the Torah would have given you only one source of Yachtov, that's what it means, a brother doing Yibam, Havamina, I would have thought that a brother to do Yibam has to be a real true brother. That they have to be brothers not only from the father, but from the mother as well. So the Gemara says, why should I think something like that? The whole point of Yibam is that the brother inherits his deceased brother's property so that it remains in the family. And that's the point of Yibam. So why should I think that Yibam would require the brother doing Yibam to be both a brother from the father and the mother? So the Gemara says, no, Itzrach, I would have thought, since it's a novelty to say that your brother's wife, you're permitted to marry your brother's wife. It's such a super novelty. I would have thought that still the Torah is very makbid and very precise that it has to be you both have to share the same father and the same mother. That's why I need two sources to teach you that it's brother from the father, and it doesn't have to be brother from the father and mother, just brother from the father. So again, there are two sources that a brother from the father that's the requirement for a Yibam. One is from the word Yachtov, and one is from a Gezer Shava, Ki Yeshu Achim Yachtov, Acham Gezer Shava, to Yaakov Avinu, where there it's also referring to brothers from the father. One more tiny piece of Gemara, and then we'll stop. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. Rav Huna said in the name of Rab, Shemeres Yavam Shmeisha. You have a lady that you're supposed to do Yibam. In other words, her husband died and she's waiting. She's a lady in waiting to do Yibam. He's waiting for somebody to do Yibam. And then she died. So then that one of the brothers is mutter be'ima, is mutter to marry the mother, because he never really was married to this lady, because she was only a lady in waiting. So normally, even if a person's wife died, you can't marry your mother-in-law, your ex-mother-in-law. If your wife died, your person can't marry his mother-in-law. Here, this is not really his wife. She was only a lady in waiting, and therefore that one of the brothers is permitted to marry the mother of this deceased girl, this deceased lady. Alma, so we see Kasava that Rav Huna Rav holds Ein Zika. There's no bond when a woman falls to Yibam. There's not an automatic bond between the brother and that lady. Why would I think? Because there is an opinion that holds that they're somewhat bonded together, and therefore already one of the brothers can even nullify a vow of hers. That we know that only a husband can nullify his wife's vow. Not only he can nullify his wife's vow from chuppah, but he could also nullify his wife's vow from if he just had erusin with her, just did kedushin with her. Because there's a half a connection when you marry. You do kedushin and then you do chuppah. So even if you do kedushin, the Torah says you can nullify that woman's vow because she's your wife. So there is an opinion that holds a lady that loses her husband and falls to Yibam, there is a bond between her and the brother even before they do anything. Kamash Malam, that Rav holds that there is no bond. We paskin that there is no bond, and therefore, when she dies, it's not like you were married to her, and therefore that living brother can marry the mother. So Gemara asked, why didn't he say straight out that we hold there is no bond? When a lady is a lady in waiting for Yibam, there is no bond. So say like that. And there's a Tana that says no Zika. And the Gemara, if Rav would have said straight out that we paskin like there is no zika, Hani Mila, I would have thought, when is there no zika? Is betray. When there are two brothers potentially waiting that could have potentially done yibum with this lady. So you don't know which brother is destined for this lady. Then you would say no zika. Ava b'chad, but if there was only one brother and one lady falling to yibum, I would have thought you paskin yesh yika. There is a bond before yibum is done. So that's why he said, no, ein zika, no, in all cases, there is no bond. So the Gemara says, not true. You could say like this, Belema, he could have worded his expression, halacha kidivri ha'omer, we paskin like the one that said, ein zika fila b'chad, like Rabbi Akiva, who said that even one brother and one lady falling to yibum, there is no connection, there is no bond between them, and therefore he cannot nullify her vows, because they're not husband and wife, there's no connection. And he could just sit, Rav could have said, we paskin like that person that says, Ein Zika, there's no bond, Afila B'chad, even if there's just one brother. Answers the Gemara, if he would have said this, Hava Mina Afila B'chayim, I would have thought that if you hold there is no bond, then why can't he marry the mother while she's still alive? Before he does Yibam and Chalitza, marry the mother-in-law. What's the problem? There is no bond over there. Kamash Malam, no. La'achamisa, only after the woman dies, the lady in waiting dies, then you can marry the mother-in-law. Mechayim, when the lady is alive, law, you can't. Why? There's no zika, there's no bond, because by you marrying the mother-in-law, by derivation, you're causing that this lady in waiting, you can't perform the mitzvah of yibam on her because you're married to her mother. So, you're not allowed to nullify the mitzvah of yibam over here on purpose. You're causing, by marrying the mother, that this lady in waiting, you can't do yibam to her. And that's nullifying or blocking yourself from doing a mitzvah. That you can't do. So therefore, the only way you can marry the mother, the only way this brother can marry the mother is if the lady in waiting dies. So it turns out you never had any connection with her. You didn't do yibam or chalitza with her. Then you can marry the mother. So that ends this sugya, but it continues on for tomorrow as well. But we learned interesting things about the 10 lost tribes and the new parak over here.
Very interesting.
Where do we leave off?
We left off